stack that 5 stacks up and then stuns the target at the end. And then finally, desecrated ground here. When you stand within the area, you're also immune to crowd control effects. It's also worth noting that all 3 of these abilities do some amount of damage. You know, again, we want them to be apple-to-apples choices, where if you're picking one of these abilities, you're not going to say, well, I have to pick this one just because it does a trivial amount of damage. Cool so far? Seem good? You with me? We're going to build a talent calculator. I'm sure many of you are going to go home and build talent calculators after this presentation. We'll hope to have something up on our website pretty soon where you can go and read all these tooltips. You don't have to furiously iPhone everything, but I'm sure you will anyway. The Druid. So one of the fun things we did with the Druid is we tried to have different tiers based on different themes of being a Druid. Level 15 is all themed about being a cat. Doesn't mean that only the feral cat spec is interested in these. It means that they're just kind of themed that way. Feline Swiftness is the movement ability we have now. Displacer Beast is a really fun ability that lets you kind of move in a random direction and get out of any kind of dots that are on you at the time. And then Tireless Pursuit is basically a second dash. So if you want to be the really mobile guy getting around the battlefield, you can do Tireless Pursuit. You'll see a lot of the Druid abilities will say something like, this ability activates X. So rather than having to jump to Cat and then hit Displacer Beast, if you're a Moonkin and you hit Displacer Beast, you'll go into Cat as part of that. Okay, level 30 is kind of a healing tier. You know, Rested Druids are going to care a lot about this, but because the Druid's a hybrid class, we wanted the other specs to feel like they could do a little bit of healing as well, even if it's something they're using on themselves. So Nature Swiftness is your next spell is instant. It's pretty similar to what we have today. Renewal is a big heal that you can do on yourself. And then Cenarian Ward, you designate a target and put a shield on them, and then they'll get healed when the shield gets broken. Okay, Tier 45 has some crowd control in here. Fairy Swarm is one of those spells that replaces Fairy Fire, but in this case it's also more powerful than Fairy Fire because it does the snare as well. Mass Entanglement's exactly what it sounds like. Root everything. And then we thought it'd be a lot of fun to put Typhoon in here. So if you want to be the bear with Typhoon, here's your chance. Level 60 is a pretty cool tier. What we did in this case is we said, let's take something cool that different talent trees have and make it available to everyone. So Wild Charge is a new version of Feral Charge. If you take this talent, you get a lot of different movement abilities, one for every different form you can go into. So if you're Bear, you get the Bear Charge. If you're Moonkin, you get the Moonkin Charge. The way Incarnation works is, depending on your spec, it activates a super powerful version of your spec. So if you like Tree of Life, this is where you get Tree of Life. If you want to say, you know, I would like to be a cat that kind of turns into the super powered cat version, you can also pick this talent. There's super boomkin and everything in here. And then finally, Force of Nature. It's not just the 3 treants you know and love today, but the 3 treants do different things depending on your spec. We didn't want to have the gigantic tooltip here. It works a little bit like the Guardian of Ancient Kings, where there's a variant depending on each of the 4 Druid specs. Remember, there's 4 Druid specs now. All right. Obviously a bear theme. Demoralizing Shout and Demoralizing Roar was one of those abilities that we weren't sure the game really needed anymore. They were kind of just maintenance-y. The debuff wasn't that interesting. We thought, let's just get rid of them and focus the tank debuffs around the more interesting Thunderclap and Sunder and things like that. So this is not the Demoralizing Roar you have today. This Demoralizing Roar is actually a CC and does a Brute Disorient. Ursol's Vortex, it can be used in any shapeshift form, but it's bear-themed, and it pulls all the enemies to you in wind. And then Bear Hug is a really interesting kind of stun where you're a bear, you've grabbed the bad guy, they're stunned, but you have to sit there and keep stunning them, and if you walk away, they're gonna break out. All right. Level 90, I mentioned before, we really wanted the kit to remind players the kit of the Druid is you can do lots of different things. That was always what the Druid is originally about. we've moved a little bit away from that by letting players specialize so much into, you know, I'm a cat, all I care about is cat stuff, I'm not going to pay attention to anything else. So level 90, we give you a choice of how you want to be a shapeshifter. There's a lot of different things here. Heart of the Wild feels really powerful. It's the one that says, you know, even though I'm a balanced druid, I still want to be a fairly good healer. I'm not as good a healer as a resto druid, but I'm willing to give up a talent point and be a pretty good healer. Same thing is true of Feral. This Feral, the Feral spec, if you pick Heart of the Wild, gives you the ability to have better armor in bear form and have a little higher intellect, but you're not going to be as powerful as a druid who picks that spec. So that's, Heart of the Wild is more about focusing on that form. Master Shapeshifter has to do with the actual act of shifting itself. So every time you shift, you increase your damage and attack power, which stacks up. So if you shift multiple times, you can build up this buff on yourself. And then Disentanglement, when you shapeshift, it removes roots and does a heal. And there's the full druid tree. All right, still with me? Still excited? Keep going? It's the Hunter. Okay, the top Hunter tier is about arrows and ammunition. This is something we've kind of flirted with a few times, and we think this is a great place to deliver it. You can have 3 different types of ammunition just by choosing the talent. The frozen arrows do the kind of thing that Frost usually does in our game. The arcane arrows restore focus, and then the venom-tipped arrows put a dot on. So again, hopefully it depends. It might depend a little bit on the situation you're in. If you're in PvP, maybe the arcane arrows look like a good choice, but gosh, having the ability to freeze or having that dot could be really attractive too. Level 30 is a crowd control tier. Silencing Shot, Wyvern Sting, pretty much the abilities we have today. Intimidation is now here, and we went ahead and changed Beastmaster's level 10 ability to Kill Command, which has always kind of made sense. Level 45, it's all about how you want to use Disengage. So every hunter will have something cool that happens when they disengage, and they choose it here. You can buff your movement speed, you can buff your kind of avoidance, or you can heal yourself after a disengage. Hunters have often asked for a self-heal, and here you can get a good one. Here's one about survivability, being slippery or perhaps being a little bit tanky. Crouching Tiger, the existing talent that can improve your disengage and deterrence. Aspect of the Iron Hawk just reduces the damage you take outright. And then this is a more powerful version of the Spirit Bond that lets you and your pet heal as long as your pet's still alive. Okay, level 75 is about resources in 3 different ways. You have 2 clickies, Fervor, which gives you focus to you and your pet, Readiness, which finishes the cooldown to your abilities, and then Thrill of the Hunt, which is just kind of a passive ability to get some focus back. So here's one of those opportunities. Some players really like having the active control. Some players would rather not have another button on their bar, and they're happy just to have it kind of happen over time, even if that means it's a little more RNG for them. So a great example of customization here. And then one thing we haven't seen a lot of yet in the Hunter tree are traps. So level 90 is all about your traps. Flash Freeze, no longer, your freezing trap no longer has a cooldown. You can keep using it as much as you want. Black Ice is a really interesting one. It increases the movement reduction speed of Ice Trap, but then it also improves your movement speed as long as you're moving to the trap. So it's kind of the buff nerf there. And then Transmorph Trap, you put a toxin on this trap that actually turns the target into a beast. So imagine they work a little like Hex, where they're obviously not very powerful as long as they're a beast there. One other thing I wanted to mention about hunters, because I know the question will come up, is what happens to the pet talents? And the way we think we're going to handle that is we're going to let hunters choose any of the 3 specs for any pet. So you can have a ferocity, tenacity, or cunning pet. If you want to have a bear doing DPS, or you want to have a moth with you in the raid, you can do that and just choose, which one you want to, if you wanted to do the damage roll or the tanking roll. And the whole hunter spread. The Mage. Mage is a great example of a class that works really well with this talent system because historically we always had a lot of the most fun abilities for crowd control, survivability, and utility in Frost, and then we always had trouble increasing their damage because they had so much utility here. So we figured it would be a lot of fun just to take the utility, put it throughout the talent tree, and then just let Frost do different types of damage, because obviously you're doing Frost damage here than Arcane and Fire. In this Brave New World, Arcane Blast is Arcane only, Fireball is Fire only, and Frostbolt is Frost only. I know, it's crazy. So, level 15 is a very chilly tier. We have the existing Ring of Frost, which probably wins the award for the most levels jumped, all the way down to 15. It goes up against Cone of Cold, and this is the improved Cone of Cold version, so it also freezes. So the only Cone of Cold out there is the one that freezes, and you don't get just kind of the lame Cone of Cold without that. And then a new way of freezing, Frostjaw, which will silence and freeze a target. Okay. I was mentioning with the Warlock, we kind of like the feel of the Mage to be like slippery and glass cannony, where we want to try to shift the Warlock back to be a little more tanky as a caster. So these are all abilities that kind of help Mages survive and get away. Greater Invisibility is an upgrade to Invisibility. It doesn't, in this case, it doesn't really replace Invisibility. It just makes your Invisibility more powerful. But the key here is it removes the 2 dots. The existing Cauterize that only Fire had access to before, and then Cold Snap, finishing the cooldown on some of your most powerful escape and control mechanisms. Okay, 45 tier is about movement. Presence of Mind obviously allows you to get a fast spell off, instantly. It's up against Scorch. Now, this is the old improved Scorch. So Scorch can always be cast by moving, but can always be cast while moving, but you don't have Scorch unless you pick this talent. So if you're in a situation where you feel like you're going to be moving a lot, you can take Scorch here and Scorch as you move around. Arcane Flows is kind of a variant on that, where it lets you cast the next 2 spells while moving. So it's like a cooldown you pop, then while you're moving you can cast those 2 spells. You get to choose between Scorch or Arcane Flows. I should mention here, we're going to make sure that Scorch isn't the no-brainer choice for Fire Mages. We're not going to have to worry about, oh, well, Fire Mages buff all their fire damage, so of course they're only going to take Scorch. We want these to be attractive to any of the 3 specs. Okay. Level 60 is another kind of escape and control level. We have the Mana Shield here, but it has Enchantress Absorption baked in.